What historical figures looked like, according to AI. With a little help from AI, we can recreate people of old. The technology is able to take the descriptions of these historical figures and turn that information into a pretty accurate image of what the person probably looked like. Jesus. I know it's probably not what you expected. Certainly not the face that's hanging up in churches or your grandma's house. But according to I, Jesus probably looked more like this than your hippie neighbor. Napoleon. There's probably no surprise here. Napoleon looks very similar to how he's always been depicted. The dark hair, the facial features. This significant figure in history is definitely accurate physically. Muhammad. Born around 570 CE in Mecca, there are, of course, no photographs of him, only paintings and portraits. Thanks to AI, we get a more realistic view of him. William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare has multiple paintings in his likeness. Based on these, we have a pretty decent idea of what the guy looked like. Buddha. In this AI rendition, we see his eyes open, somewhat of a smile on his face, and a much more detailed account of his features. It's very interesting to see the program still found a way to incorporate the gold that is so often associated with Buddha. Aristotle. With AI, we're shown a much softer, worn face. He looks a lot more like someone's grandpa than a figure of old. We're able to see so much more character on his face and feel more of a sense of humanity about him. Alexander the Great. Honestly, in most of the paintings and portraits, Alexander the Great is this young, heroic, handsome fellow. AI has delivered us an intimate look at the historic figure, and we can't take our eyes off of him. Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar has had multiple portrayals of him through multiple types of media. He looks older, and definitely a little more stressed out than in other portrayals. Is it because AI knows his whole story and what would eventually go down? Christopher Columbus. We've all seen his portraits and have a good idea of what Columbus probably looked like. According to AI, it seems like his features are much sharper. He has a more defined jawline and nose. King Arthur. Here, we see King Arthur in all his medieval glory. It seems his likeness here certainly lends itself to several tapestries showing Arthur in a coat of arms. He has a long slim face with lighter colored hair. Mozart. In most portraits, Mozart is portrayed with pursed lips and a slightly large nose. Since the majority depict these features, it's safe to assume it's pretty accurate. Plato. Plato eludes a solid image of what he really looked like. Though he has many notable theories that some spend their lives studying and elaborating on, we still only have theories about the smaller details of his appearance. Beethoven. We often imagine Beethoven with an angry expression and wild hair. AI gives us a bit of a softer image. He certainly still looks the same as in his portraits, but this more realistic rendition is giving off rockstar vibes. Leonardo da Vinci. There are many paintings and sketches of the man himself, and they seem pretty consistent with each other. As usual, the AI just adds a touch of realism to any previous rendition. Here, we see him from straight on, with him looking directly at us. Genghis Khan. Many of the man's portraits surely don't do him justice. Many depict him as looking like a peaceful, laid-back kind of guy instead of the fearsome conqueror that he was. In this image, you can see his intensity and greatness. Johann Sebastian Bach. In every portrait and painting, Bach is shown with a furrowed brow and an extremely curly wig. The AI program produced a more natural-looking image, consistent with the stern expression, but gave him wavy silver hair. Galileo. When we look through his many paintings and portraits, we see some variance in his appearance. However, this AI rendition certainly captures some of his key features. He definitely had a receding hairline with a wrinkled forehead. King David. With AI, we can see a much more accurate depiction of what King David probably looked like. He is wearing culturally appropriate clothing and is much more on target appearance-wise. Constantine. A few facial characteristics seem to be constant in all of his depictions: large eyes, bags under the eyes, and a cleft chin. In the AI portrait, we still have these characteristics, though the cleft chin has lost its dimple. Socrates. Based on the many statues, sketches, and paintings of Socrates, the man had a very distinct look about him. He still looks similar to previous images, but here, we see his eyes are an average distance apart, his hair and beard are not wavy, and even his nose is quite different. William the Conqueror. When it comes to details, there isn't much consistency in depictions of the man. What stands out in this AI image is his brow structure. He still looks like a man who could achieve his title. Vincent van Gogh. With Vincent van Gogh, we have multiple paintings of him and see a very strong pattern throughout each rendition. AI agrees, though it doesn't take these details quite to the extreme we see in the paintings. Michelangelo. AI made Michelangelo older than the bulk of his portraits, but we still see many of the same characteristics, including his ears, his eyebrows, and the lines on his face. Ali. Ali is widely revered and honored by Muslims, but there are not many images of him that one can find. AI created a youthful rendition of the leader, complete with kind eyes, a bit of a smile, and striking dark hair. Joan of Arc. Here, we see her with her eyes cast up, a covering on her head, and still clad in armor. Compared to the art we see from the 1400s, this extremely realistic rendition lends itself to imagining her on horseback. Cleopatra. If we look at this AI image, the program definitely took the seductress description to heart, though this is still a completely new look for Cleopatra. She appears to be taller and smaller framed than in other depictions. Nero. The AI program depicts him as an older man than we see in the majority of his portrayals. This seems to have helped his looks quite a bit, though his hair still looks a bit bizarre. Martin Luther. In each of his portraits, there is not much variance in any of his features. The artists had him down pat. This may be the most similar looking AI image on the list. There's not much difference between other images you see of Martin Luther versus the image here. Nefertiti. Nefertiti's looks are almost solely based on the famous bust believed to have been crafted in 1345 BCE. In the AI depiction, we see the same delicate features and what we can assume to be her iconic crown. The image here is strikingly similar to the renowned bust. Vlad the Impaler. In many paintings, he is shown with large eyes, a pointed nose, and long, dark hair. Based on the rest of his images, this AI rendition is scarily accurate. The exaggerated pale skin is no doubt traced to his Dracula connections. Mary Magdalene. Like much of the Bible, she's yet another biblical figure that is shown as being fair-complected with long, red hair. But as you can see here, she is darker complected. Adam and Eve. AI thinks of these two figures as having darker skin than other portrayals, dark hair, and an average to slender build. Eve is even sporting a necklace. Abraham. Abraham is commonly depicted as an old man with a long white beard and long white hair to match. AI seems to think of him as an old man with white facial hair who likes to keep it trimmed up. Pocahontas. There is not a very consistent portrayal of Pocahontas. Many of the paintings and sketches of her are very different from each other. Because of this, it's hard to say what any of her distinct features were. AI paints her as a young beauty, similar to the Disney depiction. Marie Antoinette. Known for her lavish spending and lifestyle, most portraits of the royal portray her in fanciful gowns, large hairpieces and hats, and plenty of makeup. In this AI image, many of those features are not shown. Instead, she is given a modest dress. Moses. Usually seen as an old man with a long, gray beard and a kind of wild head of hair with an expression to match, the AI image shows us a slightly different take. Here, we see him not only with a long white beard and long white hair, he's also quite bald on top. King Solomon. In this AI rendition, King Solomon seems to be much more accurate for his geographical location. He is dark-skinned, has dark facial hair, and has an intense look on his face, fitting for a king. Sacagawea. Commonly depicted with long, dark hair split into two braids and walking staff in hand, Sacagawea's overall image is pretty consistent throughout her many portrayals. In this AI image, she is also shown with double braids, traditional clothing, and strong facial features. George Washington. AI has a slightly different take on this historical figure. Here, we see him as a young man, void of all the usual wrinkles, furrowed brows, and age characteristics. Shown in military uniform, it looks like he's ready to lead the Patriots onto the battlefield once again. King Tut. When you look up King Tut, the images are overwhelmingly of his sarcophagus. There are not many images available to give an idea of what he might have looked like. That's where AI comes in handy. He's missing the large headgear that he is usually associated with, so it does give him a different look. Mary Queen of Scots. Though she looks different than her portraits, AI has kept most of her key features. She still has red, curly hair and extremely light skin. In this rendition, her nose is not so pointed, and her eyebrows are a bit more definitive. Dante Alighieri. Dante is usually depicted as having a long, pointed nose that curved downward and a very short mouth line. In nearly every portrait, he is wearing a headpiece made of a reddish cloth wrapped with leaves. In this AI portrait, we lost the consistency of the interesting head garment. Saint Nicholas. Though this AI image looks similar to a select few portraits of the saint, this is not the most popular depiction of him. With large bags under his eyes, a short beard, and a small frame, he doesn't look like a figure who would inspire the creation of Santa Claus. Copernicus. In this AI rendition, he looks extremely similar to all his other depictions. His haircut looks the same, his nose is the same, and he has the same dark eyes. A few minor differences include the shape of his face and his mouth. Richard III. AI's depiction of Richard III certainly makes him look more intimidating. Missing his usual hat with an insignia, he definitely has a different look about him. However, many key physical characteristics are the same, from his hair to his eyes, to his skin tone. Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson is frequently portrayed in his older age, with a white wig, dark eyes, and furrowed brows. In this AI portrait, his wig is much longer and grayer than his usual depictions. The rest of his features seem pretty consistent. Even the clothes he is shown wearing here are how he is usually portrayed. Ben Franklin. Franklin is usually portrayed as having a receding hairline, long, natural hair, and a clean-shaven face. AI has produced an image that certainly has the likeness of old Ben, but maybe from an alternate universe. He has a similar head shape, hairline, and hair, but they seem exaggerated. Henry VII. Henry has a long, thin face with scraggly hair. He's also wearing a headpiece. AI was aware he needed the traditional hat. His eyebrows, nose, and mouth are almost identical to most of his portrayals. Frédéric Chopin. Depicted at a much older age here, AI has captured some similarities but mainly differences. It's mainly the eyes. The eyes look significantly different from any other rendition we see of him. The rest of the differences can be chalked up to his older age. Find more at alot.com.